My good friend Megan Connolly joins us for this episode of Finding 44. For wrestling fans, you know her as WWE personality Megan Morant. She and I met early in her career as team reporters in the NFL. Megan is also an insanely talented distance runner, and she tells us about navigating some new marathon goals as she prepares to welcome her first child in just a few weeks. You'll also learn just how selfless and kind she is as she shares how she became a kidney donor to a stranger in 2023.
Coming into this interview, I knew a little bit about Megan's story and what amazing talent she is, but hearing directly from her on how she was inspired to initiate a donation chain and personally trigger a ripple effect of lives saved, I was blown away and am in complete awe. Listeners, I'm so excited for you to hear from this episode's champion for change, Megan Connolly. Hi, Megan. Thanks so much for being here with us today. We are so thrilled to have you on Finding 44. And I am new to the party, as I usually am, but I know you and Larra have a long friendship together. So why don't you guys tell us how it is that you first got to know each other and how your relationship has grown over the years?
Well, Larra and I are both team reporters in the NFL. I was working as the Patriots team reporter while Larra is still working as the Indianapolis Colts team reporter. We were connected via this group chat of all these incredible women that are team reporters for their respective organizations. And Larra and I clicked almost immediately because we are both crazy distance runners. So Larra does her daily mile. I am a marathon addict, a marathon survivor. But so pretty much as soon as I learned like Larra was also a Division I runner, I was like, oh, that's my girl. That is my person.
And I think you are, that's true. You see that in her Survivor. As I said, I watch from, with affection from afar, like it's freezing out and you're running. And
well, it's funny, like whenever you're out somewhere, I mean, us runners, we have like little ticks that you can pick up. You're like, oh, like I see a Koros watch or I see someone wearing Brooke shoes. And I'm like, are you one of us? And so I feel like whenever it's like that Spider-Man meme moment when it's like, oh, you too? Yes.
Megan, I think about like when we initially connected and you ran track and field and cross country at Northwestern. I ran at Indiana. We're working in the NFL together. But then since then, I feel like we have had so many evolutions of life since then. Like since we met, we've both gotten married. You've changed jobs. You've moved like 3 or 4 times now. You're welcoming your first child. And I just love that we've been able to follow so much of this evolution together, and our friendship has evolved. Like it's so fun because when I'll be doing some track and field stuff, I'll get these like texts from Megan, like what she's watching. So it's like almost like having an additional producer who's like weighing in and like giving me notes like as we go.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Larra's known me as Megan O'Brien, as Megan Connolly, and now as Megan Morant with WWE. So we've been through different name changes. The Connolly is from marriage. The Morant came from when I joined WWE. That is my WWE name. A lot of people are always super confused about that. But yeah, it's been so much fun because like football and sports reporting and all of that is like certainly one of my biggest passions. But then, life kind of took me to WWE and that's been a blast as well. But I've always just been like this track junkie. And whenever I watch track and field, I get to see my friend Larra on all of the broadcasts. And it's one of those sports where not a ton of people follow it. So when you find someone that you can talk about it with, like in depth, like I can't even tell you how many times I was texting Larra this summer about track and field at the Olympics and texting her about my girl crush on Parker Valvey or how Ellie St. Pierre is the most badass mom runner that I've ever seen. And like Larra gets it, whereas I try to explain it to people who don't follow running and like, oh, that's cool, I guess. I'm like, no, but you don't understand. Parker Valvey is like unbelievable and she gets her nails done before the race. but Larra and I are on the same page and we speak the same language.
I know, it's like the Venn diagram of our being like sports junkie, track junkie, girly girls. Like like this is where we meet, is all in the middle of this. But okay, you mentioned it, your role with WWE. Can you please take us through? Because I think that this is fascinating. When I was talking to you and you were interviewing for the job at the WWE, I was like, I cannot imagine going from more of kind of a different type of environment from the Bill Belichick era New England Patriots to this like incredible world of like entertainment and with mass fandom with the WWE.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Definitely unexpected. I never in a million years thought that I would be working for the WWE, and an opportunity came up to audition. And I mean, I didn't really ever watch wrestling growing up. So all of a sudden, when the opportunity came up, and during one of the initial screening calls, they had asked how much you know about wrestling, I was ready to lie and just say, oh yeah, I've been watching my whole life. And before I could even get words out of my mouth, my now boss said, please don't lie. I prefer to hire people who are not fans. So I said, okay, well, I'm your girl. I've never watched. So he said, okay, I'll give you a month, like watch the product and then we'll bring you down and you'll do an audition. And I think it really helped me that I didn't know what I didn't know, because had I known what I knew now, I would have been unbelievably nervous for this audition. But it was just so new to me. It was during the pandemic. It was at a time where fans were not in arenas. So it was just a totally different environment than it is now, with these sold out arenas and these passionate fans. I wasn't really getting all of that when I was watching it, but what I was getting was this incredible ability of these WWE superstars to convey stories through their matches, through their backstage promos, and just the insane storytelling that they're able to do. And instantly it was like, oh, I love this. It's like theater meets sports. It's so much fun to follow along, and there's really something for everybody in it. It appeals to, children. It appeals to adults. And I think it's one of those things, like, I didn't realize how many wrestling fans were in my life until I started working for WWE, because all of a sudden these people that I've known for decades were like, oh my God, I love WWE. I watch every Monday and every Friday. I was like, what? Like, we've never talked about this before. So I first joined WWE as a backstage interviewer on SmackDown. So I did all of the backstage interviews with the superstars.
You're kind of like a sideline reporter.
Yes, but sort of in the role with WWE, you're like playing the role of a sideline reporter, which was unique for me because I had been an actual sideline reporter and I didn't have an acting background. So I was like, I guess just do what I usually do, right? And that was a blast. I mean, the WWE is a grind. You travel around the world for 52 weeks a year. Every single week, there is no off season. And it's just incredible because you're interacting with people from all different cities and all different parts of the world. And they all share this common bond that they love storytelling and they love wrestling. And then about a year and a half ago, I moved from Florida to Connecticut, and now I'm in the studio for WWE. So I'm hosting some of the pre-shows, some of the post-shows, some of our like weekly content shows. And this is kind of more like what I went to school for in that hosting role. I'm no longer like playing the role of anything. It's more just, here's our show, let's react to it. And yeah, it's so much fun. I love the storytelling aspect of all of it. And really, when we watch sports, we watch them to be entertained, and WWE is sports entertainment. And it's just like, imagine if you watched a game that had an unbelievable ending every single time. Like, we live for those games, and it doesn't always happen. It happens a lot of times, but not every single game. And WWE like always has that, where it just like, it leaves you wanting more. And that's probably one of my favorite things about it.
One of the phrases that is really common in our business, and I think just like in this age right now, is like imposter syndrome. Like, I know I have felt it. Megan and I saw each other at the Athlos track meet, which was back in September of 2024. And it's like all these track and field superstars, or when I'm, maybe sometimes on the sidelines at a Colts game, different things like that, because you look around and you're like, what on earth did I do to kind of earn the opportunity to be here? I would imagine, like, how did you combat some of that when you came into wrestling, not knowing a whole lot, but you have these bosses who are like, no, we're hiring you for your talent and your ability and the belief in you.
Yeah, that has been probably one of the biggest hurdles to overcome, especially, working with some people who have been watching wrestling since they can remember, since they were in kindergarten, and they've followed the history of all of it. And it's an ongoing process for sure. My co-host, his name is Sam Roberts. He's just been unbelievable with lifting me up and making me feel like my voice, my opinion, my insight all matters, because the reality of it is WWE has grown so much over the last 5 years. Like, it is so popular right now. Last year's road to WrestleMania was historic, and there are just so many new eyeballs on this product. And what my co-host Sam always tells me is, I want to hear from fans like you, fans that aren't jaded like me, who started watching 25 years ago. And so just being uplifted and being empowered by the people around me, whether it's my co-host Sam or my previous boss, Michael Cole, who always told me, you belong here. Like, I didn't bring you here because I didn't think you could do it. Like, don't second guess yourself. So, we always have those moments of doubt, and I think that's natural, but finding the people who will empower you, I think, is what has helped me. And it is fun because as I grow with WWE, there are moments now that I say, like, oh, I remember when that started, right? Like, I'm watching Liv Morgan, for example. She's the women's world champion. And to watch her evolution from when I started till now, I feel like I have all of this context that I wouldn't have had with a lot of other storylines or a lot of other characters, when I started working with the company 4 years ago.
I saw Liv Morgan at a Colts game. Actually, she came in and did a whole bit. She is, like, for people who don't know, like, she's the WWE's Margot Robbie. Is she not, Megan?
She's beautiful. Yes, she's unbelievably beautiful. It is funny you say that, because she went to the premiere of Barbie and she looked more like Margot than Margot looked like Margot. They took a picture together. I was like, how is this even possible?
Oh, that's tough. I hate when I get mistaken for Margot Robbie. It's like, it really ruins my day when that happens to me. No, but I was just going to, kind of reaffirm from my perspective too, because Megan, I'm a lot like you. WWE was not necessarily on my radar as one of the sports or entertainment properties that I was, an avid fan of. Although, funnily enough, my youngest son's initials are WWE. So he is now leading the charge in the family of, really trying to inject that kind of that energy into the household. And he really does. He may have a future in it. But one of the things that I love, kind of in my day job of marketing and storytelling, and you're talking about, the opportunity for storytelling and our background in sports. I've always loved sports for its ability to connect people through story. And so I'm just curious, from your perspective, what are some of those storylines, whether they, be kind of scripted or not, that you found to be like most moving, impactful for you in the WWE time?
Yeah, I think one that comes to the front of my mind, just sort of for the period of life that I'm in right now. Becky Lynch is probably one of the greatest female WWE superstars in the history of the business. She just came out with a book last fall. It's called Becky Lynch, Not Your Average Girl. And it really, it documents her journey to becoming the man, which is what she goes by in WWE. and becoming a double champion and becoming a history maker. But what inspires me most about Becky is just how relentless she was in her pursuit. And, a lot of times there are things that you're doing in WWE that maybe just aren't resonating with the fan. So we see these superstars a lot of times have to completely reinvent themselves and find something that sticks. So Becky did that, came in and really was not much and turned herself into the biggest star in the business. And right when Becky was at the top of her game, Becky found out that she was expecting her first child. So Becky took her time away and came back better than she's ever been before. And really just watching her comeback, watching her go from, being this double champion and coming back, and she's carrying her baby around backstage and she's still doing her thing, and she's still, just as motivated as she was before she became a mother. And for me, who was expecting my first child in March, it was just like so inspirational watching someone, juggle that. And I think there's like a lot of emotions that happen when you find out that you're pregnant, especially when you're thinking about your career and your future. And, I have really big running goals as well. So there were, some mixed emotions of like, as happy as I am to enter this chapter, like, how is it going to impact my career? How is it going to impact my running? How is it going to impact my life? And there's been so many incredible women who are also incredible mothers and incredible in their profession. And I just like look right in the business that I work in, and there's no better example than Becky Lynch and what she's been able to do before she was a mom, after she's a mom, and what she continues to do in her career.
I love that so much. I mentioned my youngest, but I have just turned 10-year-old twins and an 8-year-old. So we had 3 in less than 2 years, and it was a lot really fast. And I was working in sports at the time too, traveling the country, client meetings, trying to pump in the airport, working, putting the twins down to bed, cleaning bottles, packing my suitcase for the next trip, all the things. And I think that, as a professional now, I'm not working exclusively in sports anymore, but just in the professional world, there are so many incredible women and moms who are doing it, but not grinding in the way that we used to have to, right? There's been a paradigm shift where it's like, hey, we are not just, badasses who can handle our business and raise a family. We're also clear enough now to say, here's what that looks like today, and here's what we need, So, it may seem like such a small thing to people, but even nursing pods at the airport, I can't tell you, how valuable that would have been to me at that time. So, I love that story so much about Becky and, that storyline shaping you and your path right now. I think I'm so excited for you and where you are. And I can tell you, I personally kind of had not an identity crisis, but in a moment of kind of identity confusion when I became a mom of like, wait a minute. I was an athlete, then I was a sports marketer, and now I'm a mom. How do they live together? And there is no script for that. It is like you figure it out on the fly. That is how you go. So that's so exciting.
Everybody's like, "Are you ready?" I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever be ready. It's just gonna happen. We're gonna do it.
You will, and that's exactly how it goes. And those are the moments that make their way out of it. That you're like, there it is. That's motherhood right there,
Megan, you talked about the comeback, from Becky coming back from the birth of her first child and all of that. You have a comeback of your own. I remember finding out that you were going to donate a kidney to a stranger. And I'm like, she's the most spectacular person. She has all of these ambitious, professional, personal running goals, all these things. Can you fill everyone in on how this came to be? Because this is a major sacrifice that you made on behalf of someone who you didn't even know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like I never thought I'd work for WWE. I never thought I'd donate a kidney. It's just like sometimes things come into your life and you either get this interest or it's just like it feels meant to be. And so I honestly really didn't know much at all about kidneys. I mean, we had them. I knew we had 2 of them, but I had never put much thought into my kidneys until somebody that I work with shared with me that they were in kidney failure and they were searching for a donor. And so, as we all do, and have questions about something, you go to Google. So I just was like Googling about this because a coworker had shared with me that they were looking for a kidney. And so I was so curious about the process and how that works. And I just found it so fascinating that, somebody could donate their kidney. And I thought, like, what does that look like? How do they do it? What is the process? What's the surgery like? So I'm Googling away and I find myself on kidney.org. And now I'm like reading every single page on kidney.org's website about the process of becoming a living kidney donor. And I think a lot of it was just awe that this is something that medical professionals can do. And my biggest takeaway was that this is a laparoscopic surgery. And really, from the donor, as long as you are approved by a medical board, there's not a lot of downsides for the donor. And in return, you can save somebody's life. And there's a lot of misconceptions about kidneys. So we all have 2 of them. And a big question a lot of people would say to me is like, well, what if one of your kidneys failed? Well, the way that kidney failure works is that they fail simultaneously. So if you go into kidney failure, you have 2 flat tires. Now, there are things that can happen that can impact one kidney and maybe not impact the other. Things like kidney cancer, things like, sometimes people have a ruptured kidney from maybe a contact sport or something of that nature. So there are things that can happen where one kidney is impacted and the other is not. But as far as kidney failure goes, if you're going to go into kidney failure, both your right and your left kidney will fail simultaneously. So the more research that I did, I realized like this organ isn't really like a backup. It's not like, hey, one of my organs fails. And no, I didn't have any history in my family of like any sort of kidney issues. So the more I read about it, I just thought like, I take really good care of myself. I know if there's someone that could do this and someone that could bounce back, it feels like it could be me. And, I learned while I was researching the process that goes into donating, how many people are just waiting to get a kidney. So a lot of times when you hear of somebody who's in kidney failure, they'll talk about they're on the list. Well, the list is the deceased donor kidney recipient list. And depending on the state you live in, it's about 8 to 10 years long. And that's a very long time to live, potentially on dialysis or to live in end-stage renal failure. And so just learning about how many people are waiting and how many people can impact and how many people are just, born with maybe a genetic mutation and they can't get a kidney. So I came forward and said that I would test. And I went in and I got a simple blood test and I got a call back and they said, thank you so much for testing. You're actually not a match and your intended recipient has found a match. So thank you so much for your time, but you're not needed. And I sort of had this feeling of like, I was thrilled, obviously, that they had found a match, but I just had this feeling of like, oh, wow, I really wanted to do that. I think that would have been so awesome if I could use my body to help, another family that's in need. And really, it's not going to impact me that much at all. So I just kind of filed it away and said, if I ever come across that again in my life, I'll definitely consider it and test again. But I guess for now, it's not meant to be. So a couple weeks later, I was on a group chat with my old coworkers from the Patriots, and someone was talking about how they had kidney stones on the group chat and how painful they were. And I was almost being sarcastic, but I had just said like, hey, if anybody in this chat ever needs a kidney, let me know. I just tested for somebody and it didn't work out, but I would love to help if anyone needs one. And my husband also worked for the Patriots, so he's on the group chat and he's in the other room and he's like, are you crazy? Like, are you just dying
You're
to
just
give this
offering
away? Like,
up organs on group text.
He's like, I thought we were done with this kidney obsession. Because when I told him I wanted to donate, he's like, no, we're not doing that. And then he started reading about it as well. And, we sat in on the hospital. They have you go through like a whole PowerPoint presentation and they explain the process to you. And he obviously sat in on it. And so he was like, look, I'm not sure if I would do it, but if you want to do this is something I would support you with. But once we were told no, he was like, okay, it's over. And now all of a sudden I'm on this group chat that he's also on. Like, hey, does anybody want a kidney? And he's like, stop, like, enough. So sure enough, my phone rings a couple of minutes later. It's my old boss, Dave. And he says like, hey, are you being serious about that kidney? And I was like, yeah, why? He was like, did you really just test for someone? I said, yeah, I did. And, it didn't work out. Like they already found a match. He's like, well, I need that kidney. I was like, for what? What do you need the kidney for? And he said, well, my wife is in kidney failure and she needs a kidney. So I said, okay, well, like put her on the phone right now. So he put her on the phone and she had just found out 2 weeks prior that kind of out of nowhere, she went for like a routine checkup. She really wasn't feeling very well and her blood work came back and they said, you need to go to the ER right now. And she was in end-stage renal failure. And like to this day, they're still like, running some genetic tests and trying to figure out where this came from. But seemingly it was kind of out of nowhere. So it was like crisis mode for their entire family. And they were panicking and trying to figure out if they could find a kidney donor. So my first question to her was, what blood type are you? And she was O, I'm B. So we knew right off the bat that we were not a match. And, when you're donating kidney for someone, that positive or negative doesn't matter. It's just you have to have the same letter type. And O can donate to anybody, but can only receive from O. So I told her, like, look, we're not a match, but actually in my research, I read about this program through the National Kidney Registry where you can donate on behalf of somebody and start a chain reaction and in return get a kidney that is a match for you. I said, I'll totally go ahead and do that process with you. It might take a little bit longer. And in the meantime, if you find somebody who's an O, I will not be offended. I've been down this road already. And obviously take the kidney if it comes. So she was like, okay, let's do this. So I called Mass General Hospital. I was living in Florida at the time. She was in Boston, and that was the transplant center she was going through. So it was fairly easy because most of the tests that I could do, that I needed to do, were done at Quest, and you can go to Quest anywhere. So I had a series of blood tests I had to do. I had to do a 24-hour urine collection. I had to go to Mass General Hospital and they did a chest x-ray. They did ultrasounds. I mean, it's pretty much the most in-depth physical that you'll ever have in your life. And, for those of you who are, interested in the process and you're thinking like, how much does this cost? Actually, the donor doesn't have to pay a dime for any of the procedures. Even if you go through them and you decide to not donate in the end, or it's not going to work out, like just for the screening process alone, the donor does not have to pay and it doesn't come from the donor's insurance. So you go through all of these tests, you meet with several different doctors, and then basically after they collect all the information, they present it to a board of doctors and they'll either approve, they'll deny, or they will defer for more testing. So I got approved probably like 3 months after I started testing, which was great. And it was a great sign because it means that I'm healthy, right? They truly will not let you donate your kidney if you're not a candidate, even if you volunteer and say, listen, it's for my dad or it's for my mom or it's for my child. And I will sign all of these papers. They're like, look, we cannot take it. I'm so sorry. And so, I was approved, and the best way that we could do it is if I advanced donated. So essentially, I would donate ahead of Margaret, and then when my process was complete, Margaret would receive a voucher, and the voucher would bump her up to like the top of another list. So within 6 months, she would get a kidney. And it would be from a living donor. That other list we talked about before is from a deceased person. So it's a deceased kidney, which typically deceased kidneys don't last as long as living kidneys. Obviously, when you're in that situation and you're looking for a life-saving organ, it's sometimes it's just you can take whatever's available, but a living kidney is probably the best type of kidney that someone can receive. So yeah, it was in July, I believe it was July 12th of 2023. I went in to Mass General and they removed my left kidney, and my kidney actually got on a plane to Los Angeles, and it was transplanted into a man. His name is Joseph. We've actually never met, but we've exchanged emails, and I hope that someday we will meet. Joseph's mom donated on behalf of her son. So her kidney went on to somebody else who had someone donate on behalf of them. So their kidney went on to somebody else who had someone donate on behalf of them. So their kidney went on to somebody else. So at the end of the day, I started a chain reaction that allowed for 4 people to get a kidney. And then 6 months later, Margaret was able to get a kidney as well, and she was a part of a chain. So yeah, it's been really special because she was on dialysis for about 2 years, and it's 3 times a day, and it just takes up so much time and energy in your life, and you truly cannot live a normal life while you're on dialysis. And she's off dialysis now. Like, her road to recovery, it was a lot longer than mine, just because there are things with like rejection, and she'll have to be on medication for the rest of her life. But like, she's doing so awesome, and she's like honestly such an inspiration to me, because for me, like, the process was like a little bit easier, right? I was never sick. I went in, I gave my kidney, and I came out on the other end okay. And she went in sick and then had like a bunch of hurdles, and then a couple months later really started to feel better. So I feel like we're still kind of in the process of, when she gets to the 1 year, that'll be like a big day for both of us. But we just went to a kidney walk together, and it's just like, we were here last year and you were on dialysis, and like, this year you're not. How cool is that? So it's been really special. Yeah, sometimes I kind of like forget that not that I forget that I did it. I'm just like, wow, like that was a big thing,
That's an incredibly big thing. And I can tell you, so on Project 44's side, we deal with bone marrow donation, which sits right in between organ donation and blood donation. And in some ways, it is regarded as organ donation because, much like your kidney getting on the plane to LA, our marrow donors, that bag of marrow gets on a plane or in a car or whatever and, makes its way for immediate transplant. But for us, I'm sure it's exactly the same in the kidney transplant world or other organ transplants. So often people will say to us, number one, well, what's the process? Is it painful? Do I have to have surgery? And actually in the blood stem cell transplant, it's similar to donating platelets. It's, really very minimally invasive for the donor. But then we have people say, well, I don't really like needles. I'm like, I don't know anybody who loves a needle. I'm not sure that anybody is like, I can't wait to go to a doctor's appointment, or I can't wait to, go have some sort of procedure or whatever. And so when I hear you talk about that excitement to say yes, and that's our vision, right, is at Project 44, it's to inspire a culture of yes, where people are moved to show up for other people. And, just hearing your energy talk about, number one, that first, potential match that didn't play out, and then offering on the group chat, and then saying to your former boss's wife, well, yeah, I'll give you mine. And then actually I'll start a chain. Like, what was happening inside of you that you knew that yes was so powerful? And how do we channel that into other people? Like, how do we spread that energy? Because that's what we need to start making a real difference.
Well, when I first started reading about kidney donation, it was definitely a process, because at first it was like, oh, I'll donate, but only to somebody that I know, because I want to make sure that my organ is going to somebody that I know will take care of it. And then the further I got into reading about the process. And the more I really reflected on kidney failure and the more people that I met that were impacted by kidney disease or end-stage renal failure, I realized, like, like, does it matter if I know the person who's getting my kidney? Like, is that important to me? And I won't say that it happened overnight. Like, not like even that question coming into my head, like, certainly didn't happen overnight. And when I was told I wasn't needed the first time, it was kind of like, okay, I guess just move on. But I found it really difficult to move on because I just felt so called and compelled to do this. I felt like this is happening in my life for a reason. And the more I thought about really why we're here is to help each other. It was probably about a year and a half before I had donated. And, I don't want to like undermine kidney failure whatsoever because it's like a terrible, terrible disease. But I had an aunt who died suddenly of cancer. So it was like she was diagnosed with cancer and 3 months later, unfortunately, she was gone. 60 years old, and it was a shock for our entire family. And watching my cousins go through what they went through, and I remember there was just so many moments where it was like, well, what can we do? How can we help? And there really wasn't anything that anybody could do. So I just had this connection to families and what they were going through because it was close to my family when my cousins went through this with my aunt, and just that feeling of like helplessness. And so I kept thinking about like families that, they received this devastating news with end-stage renal failure. And it's like, well, what do we do as a family? Like, how can somebody help? And it was like, well, I can help. Like, I have 2 kidneys. I'm healthy. I can totally help you. Like, this isn't going to impact, my health in the way that it's going to impact yours. Like, I definitely can help you. And I just, I found myself thinking about my aunt a lot and my cousins and just my whole family and how we were impacted by that experience. And that really like drove me to want to be there for other families. And really like at the end of the day, like it's truly, I know it sounds cheesy and it's like, but it's truly why we're here is to help each other in whatever way it is that we can. And I think like the more people talk about going through the experience of donating, whether it's kidneys or liver or bone marrow, and continue to live their lives, I think it becomes less scary, right? Because it's just like, oh my God, you donated a kidney. And then I tell people it was laparoscopic. They're like, no way. And then I tell people that, I've been able to run marathons. And then I tell people I'm expecting my first child. And it's like, yeah, like I knew the whole time going in that this wasn't going to be like end my life, right? Like I knew that I was going to live a very normal life after this, but there's a lot of misconceptions out there that, they think that it's over just because if you do this, right? And then there's a lot of questions like, well, what if you were to go into kidney failure? Well, if I went into kidney failure because I donated, I'm at the top of the list. Like I would be able to get a kidney very quickly, which, is nice because that is a risk, right? When you go in and it's like, well, what if you do go into kidney failure? What if something does happen? And it's nice that they have that donor protection as well.
You've run the marathon you've run what, 2 marathons since your donation?
Yes, I have.
And that includes an unbelievable PR at the Eugene Marathon, 11-minute PR, 2:45, which like, that's like a podium finish. Like, and the Eugene Marathon, for people who aren't like in the runner space, like we are, Eugene and the University of Oregon, that is a bit of a running mecca. So this is truly like one of those, like, it's different than like Boston or New York or maybe some of those marathons that people typically follow, but it's a highly competitive marathon. So to run 2:45, to have a PR post kidney donation, how significant of a milestone accomplishment was that for you?
Well, I think after I donated, it's just you feel so powerful. It's like, oh my gosh, my body has done so much for so many people, and that is so cool. And it also just kind of took me out of the equation a little bit, where it was just like, my body is so strong. It's it's about more than just me. And so that was probably one of my biggest questions when I was getting tested to donate my kidney. It was like, okay, well, how long do I have to take off running? Because that answer is going to dictate
That would be
a
me.
lot of my decisions. How many days? How much time are we taking off? And so the answer was 6 weeks, which I honestly didn't think was too bad. And the reason it's 6 weeks is because so I basically have 3 scars. I have like 2 little laparoscopic scars that are honestly almost faded. And then I have like a little tiny, basically a C-section length scar right above my pubic bone. And that's where they got the kidney out. And so the reason that it's 6 weeks is because there is a risk that you could have a hernia. And they just want to minimize and reduce that risk as much as possible. So I was good. I was a good patient. I did listen. I took the 6 weeks off. I only had to spend 1 night in the hospital, which is great. As far as pain goes, like I wasn't on any painkillers or anything as soon as I was discharged from the hospital, just Tylenol. And so, yeah, my like road to getting back to running began, and it just kind of started with a lot of walking. That helped my recovery a lot. And then once they hit the 6-week mark, it was like, okay, let's get back out there and start to run again. I had committed to doing the New York City Marathon for charity for WWE. They do it through Connor's Cure, which supports pediatric cancer. And I had committed to fundraising the money for it. But I knew with the timing of the surgery in mid-July and then 6 weeks off, and then New York is the first week of November, I was like, I don't really think that this race is going to happen at all. And I sort of wrote it off. I had a summer that was busier than I could have ever imagined. I moved to Connecticut. I started a new job. I donated an organ. I was like, okay, New York is going to have to wait, but I'm going to fundraise because I committed to it. So kind of whenever I move to a new city, my like first thing is like, where are the runners? Because that's how I find my community, and running can be so solitary. It's just easier when you do it together. So I was like looking for a community of runners. I found this wonderful group in Connecticut, and you know, I had, it was in the back of my mind that I had this bib for New York, but I wasn't really like doing any sort of training to get ready for New York. So, you know, I was doing runs, like I'd go for an hour and I felt pretty good. I wasn't doing any like track workouts. I wasn't doing any speed specific anything. And I meet this group to run on a Sunday. It was like the second time I'd ever run with them. And one of the guys in the group said, "How far are you going?" I said, "Well, I don't know. How far are you going?" He's like, "Oh, I have to run 16 today." I was like, "Well, I do have a bib for New York." And I had gone maybe 12 like before this. And I felt fine. Like I didn't, every now and then my like scar would feel a little tingy, but no real issues or anything. And so I was like, well, I'll see if I can go 16 with you, but I don't have any fuel. And then he's like handed me a package of Morton and he was like, "Here you go. You have fuel. You can come with me." I'm like, "All right, we'll see if I make it." And so I ran the 16 miles with him, and when I finished, I was like, okay, I feel pretty good. Like I could definitely finish the marathon. Like I don't know what the time is going to look like, but I could definitely finish. So I think at that point I was like 5 weeks away from New York, and I was like, you know, like what's the worst that happens? Like I drop out of the race. Like it's not the end of the world, you know, at least I tried. So I kind of increased my mileage. I think I got like one 18-miler in and like another 16-miler in. And I was like, I know I can finish. Like I know that at the very least I can cross that finish line. And if I have to stop, I will just stop. I promised my husband that because he was like, "You just donated a kidney. Why are we doing this?" Like again, he was like, "You are crazy." And I was like, "I promise I will stop. I promise you I will." So yeah, it was 15 weeks since my surgery, and I had the bib and really just like had no expectations. But why not, right? So I jumped into the race, and I actually ended up running pretty well. I had to take a couple little walk breaks because I went out a little bit too hot. I got just kind of swept up in the energy of New York, which happens.
That's all former collegiate runners when you go do a road race. Like that's it. We all like revert back to like, we think we're racing like that again, and you just bolt out. It's hard.
I know. It's like, it's hard. It is. It like takes a lot of discipline. But I ended up running 3:02. And so once I ran the 3:02, I was just like, one, I was kind of amazed that I had done that. I think at the time it was like my second fastest marathon ever. And I was like, wow, and this is all after I donated an organ 15 weeks and didn't do any of this training. And it just propelled me to really get back into it and train for Eugene. I sort of had like a disappointing college career. I never really ran to what I thought was my potential. And I've like had a lot of these goals kind of in the back of my head secretly. And since moving here to Connecticut, I like met this wonderful human named Heather who's coaching me. And she was at the finish line in New York when I ran the 302, and she just kind of gave me a look like, we're going to do some big things in the spring. So we kind of hit the ground running. Like it was really special because in 2020, Larra, you know this, but I think there was over 300 women who qualified for the Olympic trials marathon, and the qualifying time to hit was 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I remember sitting on my couch watching it being like, what if? Like, what if one day, you know, maybe, but it is scary, right? Like even just saying those words, like Olympic trials marathon, it's like terrifying. And I'd always wanted to run at Eugene, as Larra mentioned, for us in the running world. It's kind of like the Mecca. It's like our Augusta National, if you will, or it's
like the Lambeau Field of track and field of running, all of that. Like any of your iconic sports venues, you know, Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park, Wrigley Field, like that's it.
Yeah, it's like Eugene is a like sacred ground. So I said, you know, I always thought in college I would make it to nationals, and that never happened. So why not, you know, run the Eugene Marathon? It ends in Hayward Field, which again is like our Lambeau Field. And, you know, I thought like if everything goes right, and maybe we'll be able to run that 2:45, which is no longer the Olympic trials standard, is now much faster. It's 2:37. But to me, like in 2020, 2:45 sounded like light years away. So like to come around the bend in Eugene and like see the clock at 2:45, and it was like, wow, this is something 4 years ago I thought was not possible, and here we are, and it's happening. And you know, it's just like the year I had. It was super special.
Like, look at this girl. Look at this like power pose across the finish line. That is so epic. Like,
well, they took that like seconds before I vomited everywhere, but I kept it together for the picture.
Priorities. That's, I mean,
we know how to be camera ready when it matters.
We do. And then you're like, okay, you're done.
Megan, you're just giving me chills for the past 45 minutes straight of like one example after another of, and I love the way you talk about it of just like, what if, you know, maybe I could just try it. What's the worst that could happen, you know, and just that energy of like, let's give it a go is like, oh my gosh, it's so refreshing.
One thing my coach always tells me is just like, people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, but underestimate what they can accomplish in 5. And that's kind of something I think about every day, where it's like, okay, I don't have to be an A+ every day, but if I can show up and be good every day, or just, you know, just keep showing up, whatever that looks like, eventually you stack days, and 5 years can look a whole lot different. But it is hard. It's easier said than done, because it's easy to lose focus, right? And lose sight of where you're going, because there's a lot of twists and turns and a lot of bumps, and it is never, ever, ever linear.
Yeah.
So
one of the things, and we thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story. And we'll be sharing information about kidney donation as well, and hope that we'll see you here in Indy for Royal Rumble. But one of the ways that we kind of always like to close out our conversations with our guests is to talk about spirit animals. And, you know, Project 44 is the moose, and we're founded in memory of Andrew Smith, who played at Butler, and his nickname was the Moose. And it's kind of this very calm, strong, gentle, focused energy. So that's Project 44. Do you have a spirit animal of your own? And if so, why is it your animal?
probably a lion, because like lions are supposed to be loyal, and I feel like I'm a very loyal person, and I definitely want to help others. But then I'm motivated, I'm fierce, I'm driven. I'm on the cusp of a Cancer and a Leo. And I think that like describes me perfectly, because I can be bold like a Leo, but emotional like a Cancer. And I think I definitely display both sides of that. But yeah, I love what you guys are doing with Project 44. And I hope that more people consider donating bone marrow, kidneys, livers. You know, it's I think until you really can understand the impact it has on another family, it's difficult to grasp the importance of it. But once you know, like somebody who's in a situation that's so dire and they're looking for that, and they're really like, donating a kidney is a big thing, but it's really in the grand scheme of what people who are going through kidney failure are going through. It's a small thing. And I was honored that I was able to do it. And I hope others at the very least consider becoming a living donor, whatever that looks like.
Well, you talked about your spirit animal as a lion, which I think about the lion being so much of a leader and being fierce and being a force. And you, my friend, are such a force in so many different ways. And I can't wait to jump on our text after this and manifest some big goals, because I need a new running benchmark. So you're going to have to help me decide like what my next race is going to be, what I need to start chasing and doing. But I am so beyond grateful for you. I love that we've been able to take the group text now into the podcast and make this happen. And so excited for you and your growing family, and cannot wait to watch and adore you become a mom in this next chapter that you have.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Maybe the Indianapolis Marathon will be on my radar. That's one a lot of people used to run pretty fast. So I've been thinking about it for a couple years now. We'll see.
Thank you so much, Megan, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Finding 44. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Follow Project 44's mission at project44.org and find us on social media at Join Project 44.